Hi there, Katya here. Sometimes our messages don't work out the way we intended, or they end up having the opposite effect than what is desired. As a result, it's important for us to understand the psychology of the boomerang effect. Today, we will talk about why it's a useful insight and dive a little deeper into human psychology and one of the ways it affects our investing habits. So, the boomerang effect shows up in a situation in which a persuasive message produces attitude change in the direction opposite to that intended. For example, new research has found that Just Say No public health campaigns to stop people drinking, smoking, or taking drugs may have the opposite effect. Studies found that the unconscious mind often fails to register the negative part of the message, meaning that these campaigns could in fact encourage the very behavior that they wish to change. Mark Earls, author of the book Herd: How to Change Mass Behavior by Harnessing Our True Nature, explained that there's quite a lot of research in addiction work to support the fact that showing the target behavior, even in heavily negative frames, can actually prompt it. Researchers worked with a group of volunteers, all of whom were smokers, and asked them to look at a number of photographs. Some featured no smoking signs in the background. The subject's desire to smoke was then measured by a test where they were shown several images of objects, including cigarettes, and asked to approach or avoid them. Those shown photographs containing no smoking signs were quicker to approach smoking-related images, and those showed neutral photographs without no smoking signs showed no preference for the smoking-related images. Earls added, real people can be frustrating to behavior change campaigns. They don't respond in a straightforward way that we'd like them to, and very often see very different things in the campaigns we run from what we intend. All too often, behavior change seems more concerned with persuading people to do the right thing than in how they perceived and process messages and information. We owe this extensive research of boomerang effect to numerous psychologists who over the years have been examining this phenomenon. But the forefathers of the research were Yale University scholars Carl Howard, Irvin Janis, and Harold Kelly, who first recorded and named the boomerang effect in 1953. They noted that it is more likely to occur under certain conditions. First one, when weak arguments are paired with ambiguous source. Second one, when weak or unclear persuasion leads the recipient to believe the communicator is trying to convince them of a different position than what the communicator intends. So basically suspects a hidden agenda. Third one, when the persuasion triggers aggression or an elevated emotional arousal. So it triggers some negative emotions and or aggression. Fourth one, when nonconformity to their own group results in feelings of guilt or social punishment. And last but not least, when the communicator's position is too far from the recipient's position and thus produces a contrast effect and thus enhances their original attitudes. Think about politics. We unfortunately see this every day. Now, in an attempt to get closer to the core of the problem, another researcher by the name of Arthur Cohen of New York University made a connection between boomerang effect and cognitive dissonance theory. The reason why I'm venturing off to this theory is because it can provide not only an explanation, but also prediction of both the intended and the unintended influence of persuasion communication on attitude change. The term cognitive dissonance is used to describe the mental discomfort that results from holding two conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. The dissonance theory, coined by Leon Festinger, says that people tend to seek consistency in their attitudes and perceptions, so this conflict causes feelings of unease and discomfort. This inconsistency between what people believe and how they behave motivates people to engage in actions that will help minimize feelings of discomfort. People attempt to relieve this tension in different ways, such as by rejecting, explaining away, or avoiding new information. So how this behavior might show up in investing patterns. Cognitive dissonance and boomerang effect can cause investors to hold losing securities positions that they otherwise would sell because they want to avoid the mental pain associated with admitting that they made a bad decision, essentially. It can cause investors to continue to invest in a security that they already own after it had gone down, to confirm an earlier decision to invest in that security without judging the new investment with objectivity and rationality. The common phrase for this concept is throwing good money after bad. And lastly, saying it's different this time. People who purchased high-flying, hugely overvaluated growth stocks in the late 1990s ignored evidence that there were no excess returns from purchasing the most expensive stock available. In fact, many of the most high-flying companies are now far below their peaks in price. Now, let's talk about some of the coping mechanisms or strategies to mitigate the effects of the boomerang effect and cognitive dissonance. All of the things that we will discuss are targeted at two main categories. First, modifying beliefs, and second, modifying actions. First, make it simple. Cut the idea to a simple statement. This doesn't mean an idea should be dumbed down unnecessarily. The art of simplifying is to encapsulate the core idea in terms that anyone can understand without changing the meaning. Next, create curiosity gaps. People allow themselves to go through everyday life on autopilot because they believe to some extent that they know pretty much everything they need to know to get them through the day. The most effective way to grab someone's attention is to show that there is something important they don't know quite yet. This immediately jolts them out of the autopilot mode that they're in by creating curiosity gaps, empty spaces in people's understanding that they feel a compulsive need to fill. Surprising facts and figures are a great and strong way of opening a successful pitch. But be concrete and descriptive. That's the third element. The more we know about a subject, the more we coach explanations in abstract terms. Pause and think, how does what I say sound to the other person? Don't overuse jargon. Concrete, visually descriptive expressions aren't just easier to understand, they stick. Last but not least, credibility. Ideas only spread if they're believed. We can gain credibility through building trust, showing compassion and sincere interest in the other person's success. And another way to support your credibility is, of course, to use effective and realistic statistics, but only if they paint a concrete, non-abstract picture. See the point above. Using the audience itself as a reference is particularly good at bestowing credibility too. For example, Ronald Reagan's electoral slogan directly addresses voters. Ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? People often trust their own judgment more than they do an expert's. So if audience can personally verify your message, it is particularly credible. Now let's address the action element. After all, this is exactly what we seek to change, especially if we're trying to support our clients. First is try using emotional appeal in your message. Emotions are the main driving force behind human behavior, even though our rational minds are trying to convince us otherwise. A single number, a piece of cold data, barely have any emotional effect, whereas an image of your own prosperity, your family's security and confidence in your financial plan can create change. Come from a positive place and create comforting images associated with the action that you are encouraging. And lastly, to build even further on this point, make sure to demonstrate how this action will benefit our client personally. So make sure you are not just concentrating on facts and figures, but make it about them, your client, their goals and values. Last but not least, ideas stick best when they're told as stories. A story is like a flight simulator for the brain. It allows us to get inside the action and anticipate how we might react in the same situation. So before we part our ways today, I'd like to share this cheat sheet with you, which summarizes the elements of effective communication which we just discussed. They can be summed up in mnemonics success. S stands for simple, find the core of any idea. U, unexpected, grab people's attention by piquing their interest. C, concrete, make idea graspable and easy to remember. C, credible, give your idea believability. E, emotional, help people see the importance of an idea. And lastly, S, story, empower through narrative. As you can imagine, these elements can be utilized in any persuasive communication, including when you're trying to avoid triggering the boomerang effect in your audience. Feel free to take a screenshot if you find it helpful. This gem of information was taken from one of my top favorite books called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, which you can find on my reference list. I hope our conversation today was helpful to you. I personally learned so much when I was gathering all this information, and it's just yet another reminder of how complicated and fascinating we are as humans. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.